My name is Eveline Kerrigan, 35 years old. I am the kind of woman who believes in doing the right thing even when no one is watching. That habit has cost me sleep, friendships, and, apparently, this job. Mark Calloway, my boss, sat behind his mahogany desk, his voice measured, almost rehearsed. After a conversation with your coworker this morning, he said, pausing to savor the moment, "We can't keep you here anymore." The words fell with the precision of a verdict. I stood still, my palms cold but steady. 5 years of work, late nights, and quiet loyalty condensed into a single sentence. I smiled not out of politeness, but because I had already accepted this ending. I reached into my bag and placed a cream-colored envelope on his desk. "I know," I said softly. Mark leaned back, eyebrows raised, trying to read me. "Is this supposed to be your resignation?" His tone carried amusement, the kind men use when they think they've already won. He tore the envelope open, chuckling. "You made this easy for both of us." Eve. But as his eyes moved down the page, the amusement drained away. His fingers stopped mid-turn. The silence in the room changed texture, thick, electric. He read the final line once, then again. Copies of all evidence have been submitted to Human Resources, the legal department, and the ethics board. The color left his face. He looked up, his voice no longer steady. "You went to the board." I met his gaze. I went where the truth belongs. For a moment, neither of us moved. The ticking of the office clock filled the space between us. Then I gathered my coat from the chair, nodded once, and walked out before he could find the right threat to hide behind. In the hallway, my breath came slow and clear. I didn't feel triumphant, only certain. By the time the elevator doors closed, Mark Calloway was already dialing someone in a hurry. 3 weeks earlier, I had made the mistake that led us here. I believed someone everyone else refused to hear. 3 weeks earlier, the office buzzed with the usual noise phones, chatter, the faint hum of ambition. I remember seeing Nora Santos standing by the break room window, holding a folder too tightly. Her eyes red. "Are you okay?" I asked. She blinked, fast, as if trying to keep herself from unraveling. "You know the wellness campaign I pitched last month, the one with the neighborhood clinics?" I nodded. It had been fresh, smart, and distinctly hers. "They're running it," she said, voice cracking. "Same concept, same copy lines. Only now it's called Mark's idea." I hesitated. Around here, ideas changed hands quietly, without credit or apology. But Nora wasn't the type to invent stories. She showed me her draft's timestamps, email chains, everything. "Have you told him I asked?" She gave a bitter laugh. "I did. He said I should be flattered. The department was inspired." I stared at the printouts. They were identical to the campaign rolling out next week. "You should take this to HR." "I already did," she said. "They told me to let it go for the good of the team." Her hands trembled. "Eve, I know this could make things worse, but would you help me file a formal complaint?" The question hung in the air. Around us, the office moved on, coffee poured, keyboards clicked, people pretending not to see. I thought of all the times I'd watched someone stay silent to keep their job. I didn't want to be another name on that list. "I'll help," I said. We spent nights after hours collecting evidence metadata, draft versions, even Nora's early sketches. She was careful, desperate, scared. When she filed the complaint, the reply came faster than expected. "Case closed, no violation found." The next morning, her desk was empty, her badge left on the keyboard. The message in the group chat said she'd resigned for personal reasons. Everyone accepted it. Everyone except me. Because the night before, I had seen the message Mark sent to HR handle this quietly. "She's not worth the trouble." By the following week, Nora's name was no longer spoken aloud. People just said what happened and glanced toward her empty desk. I started noticing the change before I could name it. A meeting I'd helped schedule suddenly moved to a different time without my invite. The project board where my notes used to hang was wiped clean. When I asked Daniel, my supervisor, he smiled too easily, just simplifying communication. Eve, fewer cooks in the kitchen. That afternoon, I overheard two analysts whispering near the printer. She's the one who backed Nora, right one said. Yeah, HR's watching her now. Heard she encouraged the whole complaint thing. They looked up and saw me. The silence after was sharper than the gossip. I kept my head down, but my inbox told the story for me. Every email from Daniel now included a new recipient, Leah from HR, copied quietly at the end. When I stepped into his office, he didn't even look up from his screen. Is there a problem, I asked? He sighed as if I'd already taken too much of his time. Eve, this isn't personal, but after Nora's situation, upper management wants oversight, just procedure. Procedure for what? For clarity, he said, finally meeting my eyes. You've been outspoken lately. It makes people uneasy. Uneasy. The word landed like a bruise. Later that week, I was called in for a development conversation. Leah waited in the conference room with a clipboard. This is just a feedback cycle, she said sweetly, sliding me a printed sheet. I read the anonymous evaluation halfway before the letters blurred. Disruptive to team unity. Displays misplaced loyalty. Leah's smile didn't falter. We're here to help you realign. I folded the paper carefully, placed it back on the table, and stood. Thank you, I said, because anger would have been too easy. As I walked back through the hallway, I could feel eyes on my back, curious, cautious, already convinced. Someone had turned my belief in the truth into proof of disloyalty. That morning, I arrived early, hoping the quiet would steady me. Through the half-open conference room door, I heard voices low, deliberate. Mark's tone was unmistakable. Nora Santos. Disloyalty issue. Kerrigan encouraged it. A pause, then Leah's voice. If we act now, we minimize exposure. The words hit like static under my skin. I stepped back before they saw me, forcing my face blank, my breath even. By 10 o'clock, my name appeared in Mark's calendar, meeting E. Kerrigan. No subject line. When I walked in, he didn't offer a seat. His office smelled of coffee and confidence. Close the door, he said. I did. He folded his hands. After a conversation with your coworker this morning, we've decided we can't keep you here anymore. My coworker. My voice barely sounded like mine. Nora, he said flatly. She admitted you were involved in her complaint. You encouraged her. That's a breach of trust. I held his stare. Nora doesn't lie. He smiled thinly. Everyone lies when they're desperate. So this is about loyalty. I said, it's about alignment, he corrected. You're talented, Eve, but you've made yourself hard to manage, and I can't have an employee who questions leadership. I wanted to argue, to show him the proof Nora and I had collected. But something inside me stopped. He wasn't listening. He never had. Instead, I asked quietly, will you put that reason in writing? His expression flickered. Let's not make this difficult. I'm not. I said, I just want it documented. He looked irritated, already reaching for his phone. Already done with me. HR will coordinate your exit. You'll receive your final check next week. I nodded, turned, and opened the door. In the hallway, I could still hear his voice behind me light, casual, moving on to the next call. The anger didn't come right away. It arrived later, quiet and steady, reshaping itself into something sharper, not revenge, not fear, resolve. That afternoon, I called the only person I trusted outside the company, Allison Green, an employment lawyer I'd met years ago during a compliance seminar. She answered on the second ring. Eveline Kerrigan, she said, her tone equal parts surprise and concern. You sound like someone who just realized the ground isn't as solid as it looked. I was let go this morning. I said, no written reason, just words about loyalty. I heard her chair creak. Tell me everything. An hour later, I sat in her office, a small space stacked with folders and casebooks. I handed her my contract. She skimmed it quickly, tapping a finger on one paragraph. Here, she said. The whistleblower clause. If you reported or supported a report about unethical conduct, the company can't retaliate without risk. Did you put anything in writing emails to HR, copies of Nora's drafts, internal messages? I still have them. Then you have leverage, she said simply. Keep it quiet for now. Gather everything emails, calendar invites, project versions, anything that shows a pattern. The less noise, the more power. I nodded, feeling something stir that I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. That night, the office was nearly empty when I logged in with my badge for the last time. Daniel's voicemail light blinked red, HR doors locked behind frosted glass. I opened my inbox and began forwarding copies of old threads to a private drive. Nora's original proposal time-stamped 3 weeks before Mark's presentation. Meeting notes with my name erased from the credits. The message to HR that read, handle this quietly. She's not worth the trouble. Every click felt deliberate, steady. When a coworker passed my desk, I smiled. Just catching up on reports, I said. She nodded, unaware that my reports were the record of how easily good people could be erased. By midnight, I had the outline of something stronger than revenge proof. I shut down the computer, slipped my drive into my coat pocket, and stepped into the cold Boston air. 2 weeks later, I stopped waiting for fairness to find me. I wrote my own ending. The resignation letter came first, short, polite, every word measured. Thank you for the opportunity. I've learned from my time here. I wish the company continued success. Nothing that could be twisted or softened by someone else's version of events. Then I wrote the second document. It was longer, sharper. I listed what Nora and I had uncovered: her original drafts, the campaign pitch deck with her metadata, the emails showing how the concept was lifted and renamed. Each point had a date, a file path, a signature. No anger, no adjectives, just evidence. The final line read, copies of all evidence have been submitted to Human Resources, the Legal Department, and the Ethics Board. When I finished, I read it twice, then printed both pages on heavy ivory paper, the kind that made every word feel irreversible. I slipped them into a cream envelope, pressed one strip of tape along the flap, and placed it inside my bag. The next morning, the office lights hummed above my desk as if nothing had changed. Daniel passed by, giving his usual half-smile. Still here for a little longer, I said. He laughed softly, already forgetting me. At 9:30, I walked to the copier room to make one final scan. The machine hummed as it captured every page, one after another. I watched the red light glide across the paper like a quiet witness. When I returned to my desk, I tucked the copies into my coat pocket and sat back, breathing evenly. Around me, keyboards clicked, phones rang, people planned the next campaign. They had no idea how much of the old order was about to shift. By the time I reached for my coffee, my hand was steady again. The envelope rested beside it, pale and perfect. Tomorrow, it would cross Mark Calloway's desk, and for the first time in weeks, I felt calm. When I walked into Mark's office that morning, he was already smiling too wide, too sure of himself. "Eve," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I was wondering when you'd come by. Ready to move on?" "Yes," I said, placing the envelope on his desk. "This is my official resignation." He glanced at it and chuckled. "Well, that saves us paperwork." He tore the flap open, scanning the first lines. Polite, professional. "I appreciate that." His tone softened into mock sympathy. "I'm sorry it had to end this way. You're talented, but sometimes people dig holes they can't climb out of." I stayed quiet. His fingers turned another page and stopped. The silence changed. His eyes narrowed as he flipped faster, reading the attached report. What is this? His voice cracked slightly. Documentation, I said evenly. Documentation of what everything Nora and I discovered. Each file has a timestamp and author record. You'll find your name in several of them. He swallowed hard. You went to the board, I went where the truth belongs. He stood abruptly, hands flat on the desk. Do you have any idea what this could do to your reputation? The industry is small. Eve, I can make one call. I met his eyes. You can make 100. The timestamps won't change. He stared at me for a long time, searching for a weakness that wasn't there. Then he sank slowly back into his chair, color fading from his face. I suppose you think this makes you righteous? He muttered. No, I said. It just makes things accurate. I turned toward the door. Behind me, I heard paper rustling, the faint clatter of his phone as he reached for it with shaking fingers. I didn't look back. The sound that filled the hallway as I walked away wasn't shouting, it was silence, deep and clean. The first morning after I left Horizon felt quiet in the wrong way. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at my laptop screen. No calendar alerts, no unread messages, no purpose. At first, I told myself it was rest. I answered a few job postings, wrote careful cover letters, waited. A week passed, then 2. The replies never came. When I called a former colleague, her tone was polite but distant. You know how it is, Eve, she said softly. People just don't want to get involved right now. I thanked her anyway and hung up before she heard how hard it was for me to swallow. Nora called from a new number one evening. Her voice carried both relief and exhaustion. I'm working part-time at a non-profit, she said. Nothing fancy. But I can breathe again. I'm glad. I told her. She hesitated. You still believe it was worth it? I wanted to say yes without thinking. Instead, I said, I think truth costs what it costs. We sat in silence for a moment before she added quietly, Whatever happens, I'm grateful you didn't let them bury me. Then the line went dead, and the house felt too large again. Days blurred together. I walked along the harbor, applied to smaller firms, watched my savings shrink like tidewater pulling back from shore. There were moments when I wondered if Mark had been right, if I'd made myself unhireable by telling the truth. That night, as rain tapped the window, my laptop chimed. A new email. Subject investigation opened message. Thank you for your integrity. The board has initiated a full ethics review. You will be contacted if testimony is required. Signed, Horizon Media Board of Directors. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. The house was still, but something inside me began to breathe again. 3 weeks after the email from the board, my phone rang while I was sorting through a pile of unanswered job applications. The caller ID read Horizon Media. I almost didn't answer. A woman's voice, calm, formal, came through. Ms. Kerrigan, this is Margaret Fulton, Chief Executive Officer. I would like to speak with you about recent developments at the company. I sat down slowly. I'm listening. There has been an internal review, she said. The board found evidence supporting the claims you submitted. Mr. Calloway has been suspended pending further investigation, and our Human Resources Director has resigned. Ms. Santos's original complaint has been officially reinstated and validated. I let her words settle. For the first time in months, I felt something like quiet justice. Margaret continued, We owe you an apology. I want to personally offer you reinstatement at Horizon with a promotion to Senior Communications Director. We will also be issuing a public acknowledgement of the events. Her tone was careful, more negotiation than contrition. I appreciate that, I said. You don't have to decide immediately, she added. We would truly value your return. I took a breath. No, thank you. The line went silent. Then, may I ask why I spent years working there, believing I had to earn my voice? I said, I'm done asking permission to use it. A pause, then a quiet sigh. I understand. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. Allison had told me the week before that she was leaving her firm to start a consultancy focused on workplace ethics and that she wanted a partner. That night, we met at a small cafe by the river. "You really turned them upside down," she said. "I just showed them what was already there." I replied. Allison smiled. "So, are we building something new?" I nodded. Something honest. 6 months later, I sat in a co-working space overlooking Boston Harbor, the hum of new beginnings surrounding me. Our firm, Eveline Kerrigan Consulting, was small but alive, built from the fragments of what had nearly broken us. Across the table, a young intern named Maya watched me organize files for a new client. She hesitated before speaking. "Eve, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said. "What made you start this, I mean? Leaving a big company like Horizon?" Walking away from all of that, I smiled, a conversation I refused to ignore. She frowned slightly, curious. "With who? With someone everyone else stopped believing in," I said, "and with myself." Maya nodded slowly, as if filing the words away for later. The phone buzzed with a message from Allison, client meeting at 2. "Don't forget the board documents." I typed back a quick reply, then reached for a plain white envelope already stamped and addressed. Inside was a single-page letter. "Dear Nora, the company made the right call, but the truth is, the fight changed me more than it changed them. I learned that integrity isn't quiet or loud, it's steady. I hope you're breathing easier now, and that your ideas have found a place that deserves them. With gratitude, Eve." I sealed the envelope and dropped it into the outgoing mail bin by the door. When I turned back, Maya was reviewing a draft policy on her screen. "You really believe people can change how companies work?" she asked. "I believe people can choose how they work," I said. "That's where it starts." Outside, the harbor gleamed in the winter light. I thought of the years I'd spent waiting for permission to be heard, and how simple it felt now to speak without asking. Sometimes, the hardest thing isn't believing someone else. It's believing yourself. And for the first time in a long while, I knew exactly what I believed. If standing by the truth cost you everything, would you still do it again?